using a rotary tome to cut some slides. He had me cutting some nematode slides for him. And it was just, you know, as for privilege of using the lab to do the other work. And contrary to what people have been told by certain, I'll just say, jaded journalists, I was not working with Clorox bleach. We were working on taurine chloramine. And that has a long and a rich history of modulating immunosuppression and immunoactivity. But it sounds like one thing when it's presented in a certain way, and it's not what the reality was. In any case, I was working in there, and I heard somebody keying the door. Now, that alerted me and scared the death out of me, because I thought somebody from the department who may know that I did not belong in there at the time may be coming in. So I began to gather my things quickly, and I was going to go out. There was a room between the two labs.
Head out the back door.
And I was getting ready to run out the back door and then get out the door by the incinerator down by the animal facility. Well, it was not members of the department who walked in. There was one gentleman who walked in wearing a suit. Another gentleman, that was LJ. I subsequently knew him during the entire 20 years. He ended up becoming the aide-de-camp to MJ1. We called him Little John because he was a large gentleman, and we called him also Little John because he was the aide-de-camp to the person whose first name is John.
We're talking about Majestic 12, one of the first members of Majestic 12.
He was considered the moral compass.
Okay. So they walked in, and what did they say to you, I wonder?
Well, the second gentleman was wearing a clear naval uniform. The third gentleman was wearing what appeared to be a half uniform, half suit. He had some unusual buttons up on his collar, and to this day, I don't know who the gentleman was. Not for sure. I had one person lie to me about it some years ago, but I found out that was a bunch of garbage. I said, "Can I help you?" And the LJ said to me, "Yes, I think you can." And they asked me to speak with them, and I asked if I could have a seat, and I ended up having a seat there in the histology at one of the desks in the lab. And I said, "Am I in some kind of trouble?" I see, just prior to this, I had given an interview, Rule 1, don't trust the press. I had given an interview, other people agree, they know, given an interview with the Yellen Rebel, and that interview was part of my contentious breakup with this certain professor, and he's passed away now, so I'm going to leave his... Yeah, it was the campus newspaper.
Okay, campus newspaper.
And I had a nickname for the modulation chemical that we were working with, and we called it transformium. It was a nickname, just kind of like we use nicknames for the Lotus Project, which we're working now. Well, how this ended up, I gave them an honest interview. I spoke the truth. I said that we're working on it, but you know, the numbers weren't high enough, and he preferred, I was being diplomatic about it, that he preferred higher numbers. We had a disagreement, and I left. Well, Crane claims cancer cure.
Was the headline.
Was the headline above the photograph of me.
Yeah.
I've never claimed such a thing. If I find one, then you'll hear me claim it.
Sounds fair enough.
But thus far, I've not. I found something that's intriguing, and I still believe it's intriguing, and the biomedical concern with which Marcia and I are now presently involved finds it intriguing, but they still have their higher priorities as well. So it's in the queue, so to speak.
Sure.
But we had a seat there that day, and they asked me basically, "You want to work for the government? You want to see the world, you know?"
They held a carrot in front of you,
see the seven C's. Oh, sure.
And they probably tantalized you with tales of incredible technology that you would have access to, that no
everything that I would ask for in a laboratory, and in fact, that portion of the promise was true. That was true.
So what was your initial response? Did they have a chat with
yes.
you? It was,
oh, no, it was yes.
Oh, straight away, you said,
well, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I was on the outs with the biology department. I was then transferred over to the psychology department, which I enjoyed anyway because I liked associationism, and that went back to my interest in biology and Erasmus Darwin and all of that. So it was yes right then and there.
So so cut to...
I had no clue what I was saying. I was just, oh, yes.
Okay, so cut to the next development in this entree into this very dark world.
Well, it's dark and it's light. It's both. The next development was a series of what I call Winnebago trips. I was taken out to the Silver Bowl area into the parking lot, and they had some vans out in the parking lot that were shiny silver, and they began placing me through rounds evaluating normal tissues, and it was by then, because of the teaching from Dr. Reynolds, that was almost a joke to me. I just started naming off the layers just like I did as a kid.
All right, they were giving you rudimentary tests and just
very rudimentary.
Yeah, all right. And that evolved into?
That evolved into meetings over at the Naval Reserve Center at the corner of Pecos and Sahara. We were brought in the back way, and then I was shown a video. And I was asked to give my opinions on the material in the video. But the interesting thing about the video was it began with 3 letters. It said M-A-J on the screen. And my knowledge of Madge at that time had to do with Palmolive. You know, you're soaking in it, the old Madge Palmolive commercials. So I thought, I had no clue.
Yeah, none. So there's absolutely nothing in your mind to link this with anything having to do with anything with ufology or any compartmentalized part of the military-industrial complex or anything?
No, I have never been, even knowledgeable of ufology. We're not members of, with all due respect to the wonderful people, I wish I could see your faces, that are in front of us here. I've never been a member of the ufological community. Oh, okay. Eagles Disobey, that Marcia and I runs, is not. We're part of an academic and research community. But the folks out here need to know what truths they've been told and what lies they've been told.
Yeah. And so cut to the next part of the story where you're starting to see some things come in. They're not what they seem to be. And how long is it before things really start to change for you?
Well, we were gradually moved from there over to Nellis Air Force Base, to a couple different facilities inside of Nellis, and then finally from Nellis up to Groom Lake, ultimately in 1989. It was a shocking experience, to say the least, to be brought up there the first time.
First time.
I knew nothing really about Majestic 12. In fact, I don't even think when I was approached I had even heard of it.
Well, what was the first trip to Area 51 like? I mean, did they take you on a bus or a plane or a combination of both?
I was originally transported up there via aircraft from Nellis Air Force Base. I was told to provide a series of letters and numbers, which I later found out, and I hope they've changed the switch since. I'm sure they have, but they're license plate numbers. And this is one of the interesting things to me. I've heard a lot of people talking about all of their experiences of going up to 51 and what they've seen and all of that business.
When you say other people, do you mean colleagues of yours?
Well, no. Folks who have presented themselves to ufology that I've heard about since I kind of came to the public, partially initially because of Marcia's efforts to free me away from what was going on, and then later on after I was ordered to do so. All right. The only reason why I even spoke publicly about the issue involving time travel or anything like that was because I was told to. I knew that it would ring more than a dissonant chord in people, and it has. I've had reactions, everything from very positive reactions to vehement, vile attacks as a result of it, and I knew that was going to be coming. That's why I've just basically said to the folks that were on the negative, God bless you, and that's how I feel. I understand that they're reacting negatively, not at me per se, because they don't know me.
Well, let's talk about, you provided us with some slides. Let's go to the PowerPoint because I want to give people an idea of where we're talking about and we have a few things that you've provided some aerial views of Area 51, if I'm not mistaken.
Most of the images that are going to come up here today, and I'm saying most now because when we spoke earlier, you didn't show me the aerial view. Most of these images I have not seen. Marcia provided them in the blind, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You're looking at an image here of we were looking at an image of there's an angular image. Mm-hmm. Of the Lake Mead area, bottom right center. Okay. The green that the folks are probably seeing in the audience, bottom left center, is the Las Vegas area. Mm-hmm. And then to the upper left, I was warned about leaning forward with I want to see it closer. Mm-hmm. Can you turn that a little bit so I can see it direct on?
Well, it's a very. Let me go to a larger picture because people are familiar with where it is.
Groom Lake on the right, Papoose Lake on the left.
This is a tighter shot of where we're talking about. It's some 90 miles northwest of Las Vegas.
Right.
It's in the middle of nowhere, and the government keeps gobbling up land.
It's an old AEC facility.
Yeah.
And
you were the first time you were there was what year?
1989.
1989.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't brought to Papoose south of there until 1990.
Okay.
We were flown in, landed on the tarmac, were greeted by the buggies on the tarmac. Another thing that I haven't heard from the other experiencers from 51, and I still don't know why. Maybe they're not saying it, or maybe they don't know. But we were greeted by the buggies, taken over to the initial security where we provided the in-switch, as it was called, where we would hand off the numbers that we were given. Mm-hmm. And that told them that whomever we were, we didn't identify ourselves by names, whomever we were, we had the right numbers on the in-switch, so they knew we belonged.
Well, let's soak into this experience because this is an extraordinary part of it. What kind of plane do you remember that they flew you out on?
Oh, it was a 737, I believe. It was Janet.
How many people were?
It was a Janet Express.
Janet Express, it's been on, yeah.
Yeah, well, the old owner, one of the people involved with Dulles early on was involved with the naming of Janet. Janet was a favored lady of someone's, but I'm not going to get into whose.
That'll be for the next disclosure dialogue.
Not with me.
Well, okay, so you come off this plane. How many people were on this plane, and can you give us an idea of the numbers?
The bottle washers were put up front, the engineers, and myself and a couple other gentlemen who were transported up there, gentlemen that I did not then know. Okay. But come to know later on in Aquarius, we were all transported up together, mm-hmm. and they were separated off because they were already part of the Aquarius unit at Papoose, and I was pulled into a different facility inside of the Groom Lake area. Right. We were brought in past a door. I went down an elevator onto a platform, mm-hmm. was told to step off onto the platform, which we did, and then we went down on a very large elevator, a flat type, what you would see on an aircraft carrier. It was an actual aircraft lowering device down to a smaller set of rooms, and that's where the quizzing continued, having to do with by then histopathology, as well as dealing with cytochemistry and items like that.
We have some photographs or some mock-ups of the installation itself. You were kind enough to provide us with some 3D renderings.
Again, okay.
You and your people. Is this a good place to start to give people an idea of the physical location itself?
That would be an edge-on view of level 3. Mm-hmm. Right. And if what you see actually on an angle shooting up through level 3 was what was supposed to be, that's third level below ground, what was supposed to be an escape tunnel. The escape tunnels were a joke. They were blow-off tunnels. If something went wrong one floor below there, everything inside of that floor would be, including the individuals, would be incinerated. Mm-hmm. So nothing would escape out to you good folks.
Different kind of escape.
And so we were told to go to the escape tunnels. Well, it was a bend over and kiss it goodbye. That's the reality. If the alarms would go off, when we were a floor below down in the 3+ lab, we knew that once we were hosed up and all of that if anything went wrong, if the alarms went off, just pull the hoses out and we called him Little John because he was a large gentleman, and we called him also Little John because he was the aide-de-camp to the person whose first name is John.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about Majestic 12, one of the first members of Majestic 12.
He was considered the moral compass.
Okay. So they walked in, and what did they say to you, I wonder?
Well, the second gentleman was wearing a clear naval uniform. The third gentleman was wearing what appeared to be a half uniform, half suit. Mm-hmm. He had some unusual buttons up on his collar, and to this day, I don't know who the gentleman was. Mm-hmm. Not for sure. Mm-hmm. I had one person lie to me about it some years ago, but I found out that was a bunch of garbage. I said, "Can I help you?" And a room between the two labs.
Head out the back door.
And I was getting ready to run out the back door and then get out the door by the incinerator down by the animal facility. Well, it was not members of the department who walked in. There was one gentleman who walked in wearing a suit. Another gentleman, that was LJ. I subsequently knew him during the entire 20 years. He ended up becoming the aide-de-camp to MJ1. Using a rotary tome to cut some slides. He had me cutting some nematode slides for him. And it was just, as for privilege of using the lab to do the other work. Mm-hmm. And contrary to what people have been told by certain, I'll just say, jaded journalists, I was not working with Clorox bleach. We were working on taurine chloramine. And that has a long and a rich history of modulating immunosuppression and immunoactivity. But it sounds like one thing when it's presented in a certain way, and it's not what the reality was. Mm-hmm. All right. In any case, I was working in there, and I heard somebody keying the door. Now, that alerted me and scared the death out of me because I thought somebody from the department who may know that I did not belong in there at the time may be coming in. Mm-hmm. So I began to gather my things quickly, and I was going to go out. There was a